Instead, they move quietly, observing from the sidelines with an almost surgical awareness. These men are often described as Sigma males, the independent thinkers who understand that real power doesn't shout, it whispers. While others chase visibility, they value subtlety, knowing that strength is often found in silence and precision. Operating in the shadows isn't a sign of weakness, it's a mark of wisdom. Imagine a crowded room where everyone is talking over one another, raising their voices just to be heard. The Sigma is there, but he's not competing for the noise. He's the man leaning back, studying every movement, every word, every small detail that others overlook. Research in social psychology shows that quieter individuals often pick up more non-verbal cues than those dominating the conversation. This makes them sharper decision makers because while the crowd seeks attention, they're gathering information. The smartest Sigma males also know a truth that history confirms. Attention can be both a gift and a curse. Too much visibility attracts envy, jealousy, and manipulation. Leaders like Nikola Tesla, for instance, worked tirelessly in the background, prioritizing invention over applause, while more flamboyant figures took the spotlight. By avoiding the constant glare of public attention, the Sigma preserves his energy, protects his peace, and keeps his purpose untangled from unnecessary distractions. Freedom is the hidden advantage of working in the shadows. Without the burden of expectations or the need to maintain an image, these men can move fluidly, adjusting their path when needed. They are not confined by trends, groupthink, or social approval. They choose depth over display, substance over show. In history and in modern life, it is often the silent strategists, the thinkers, inventors, and quiet leaders who leave the deepest impact. Their voices may not fill the room in the moment, but their work echoes long after the noise has faded. In this video, we'll explore why the smartest Sigma males prefer to operate in the shadows. We'll look at 6 key reasons behind their quiet power and why this way of life not only protects them, but also sets them apart as men of substance. Number 1, they value observation over participation. Sigma males know that wisdom begins with clarity of vision. By choosing to remain in the background, they create the space to truly observe human behavior without the noise of constant engagement. This quiet vantage point is not a retreat from life, but a strategic position. Just as a scientist studies patterns in nature by watching patiently, the Sigma studies the movements, words, and motives of those around him. While others rush into action, often driven by impulse or the need for recognition, the Sigma pauses. He notices what others overlook, the subtle shifts in tone, the hidden intentions behind words, and the unspoken dynamics in a group. This ability to discern patterns gives him a level of foresight that feels almost predictive. Observation, after all, has always been a foundation of wisdom. Ancient philosophers like Aristotle emphasized that understanding begins with careful attention to the world around us. Modern psychology echoes this truth, noting that people who take time to observe and reflect often make more accurate judgments than those who act on instinct alone. Sigma males embody this principle. They are not distracted by the need to dominate every conversation or be the loudest presence in the room. Instead, they allow silence to sharpen their awareness. It is in this silence that they gather insights others miss, insights that later inform their decisions and strategies. The advantage of staying in the background is also practical. Neuroscience shows that overstimulation, being constantly active, speaking or seeking attention, limits the brain's ability to process information deeply. By contrast, when one takes the role of an observer, the mind shifts into a more analytical state, detecting connections and anticipating outcomes. Sigma males lean into this cognitive edge. Their patience is not passivity but preparation. When the time comes to act, they are equipped not just with knowledge but with foresight. They move with precision rather than haste, making their actions more impactful. In a world that often rewards noise over nuance, the Sigma male proves that true strength lies in restraint. He knows that by seeing clearly, he can move wisely. His life becomes less about reacting and more about anticipating, less about proving and more about understanding. This balance of observation and action not only sets him apart, but also gives him an enduring advantage in relationships, careers, and personal growth. Observation for the Sigma is not just a habit, it is the root of his wisdom and the secret to his quiet power. Number two, they avoid needless conflict. Operating in the shadows allows Sigma men to move differently from the rest of the world. Where others chase validation, defend fragile egos, or fight over temporary status, the Sigma takes a quieter path. By refusing to play the game of constant competition, he sidesteps unnecessary confrontations that drain time and energy. This is not avoidance out of fear, but strategy born from clarity. History shows us that some of the most effective leaders and thinkers thrived not by standing in the spotlight, but by observing from the sidelines, choosing their moments with precision. For example, Nikola Tesla, though less socially dominant than his rival Thomas Edison, focused his efforts on innovation rather than public battles. His silence often held more power than words because it left others uncertain, unable to predict his next move. In psychology, this approach resonates with the concept of energy conservation. Human beings have a limited amount of mental and emotional energy each day, and research suggests that constant conflict, whether verbal or physical, elevates cortisol, the stress hormone, leading to fatigue and poor decision-making. Sigma men understand this instinctively. By staying in the shadows, they conserve their resources for matters of real importance. They don't fight over who gets the last word in an argument or who appears more dominant in a social circle. Instead, they save that energy for building businesses, mastering skills, or navigating life-changing opportunities. Their silence can be unsettling. Opponents often expect a reaction, an angry defense, a counterattack, or at least a sign of weakness. When none comes, they are left disarmed. In martial arts philosophy, this is similar to the principle of yielding. A practitioner of Aikido, for example, doesn't meet force with equal force, but redirects it, letting the opponent's energy exhaust itself. Sigma men apply this same wisdom socially and professionally. They don't waste strength where it's not required. They let noise fade on its own, knowing that not every challenge deserves their presence. This ability to operate unseen is not only practical, but also powerful. It allows them to remain unpredictable. While the alpha announces every move and the beta seeks approval before acting, the sigma builds in silence and reveals only results. In a world obsessed with broadcasting everything, this makes them stand out even more. Their quietness becomes their weapon, their restraint, their shield. And when the moment finally arrives to step forward, they do so with the full force of preserved energy, making an impact that those who spent their lives in constant conflict could never achieve. Number three, they protect their energy. Constant exposure to people, places, and pressures drains a man's mental and emotional reserves more quickly than many realize. Modern psychology calls this decision fatigue, a phenomenon where the more social and environmental stimuli you are forced to process, the less energy your brain has left for meaningful choices. A Sigma male, by nature, is acutely aware of this cost. Unlike those who thrive on external validation, he doesn't spread himself thin across endless conversations, social events, or obligations. Instead, he conserves his mental energy by keeping his circle small, his routines intentional, and his presence subtle. This isn't about isolation, it's about strategy. History shows that some of the most influential thinkers and innovators, from Nikola Tesla to Albert Einstein, often valued solitude. It was in their quiet moments that groundbreaking ideas emerged, precisely because their attention wasn't scattered across trivialities. Studies on creativity consistently confirm that uninterrupted solitude enhances problem-solving and original thought. For the Sigma male, this principle isn't just useful, it's a way of life. By stepping away from unnecessary social noise, he ensures his mental resources are directed toward pursuits that matter, whether that's mastering a skill, building a business, or simply sharpening his worldview. Another reason Sigmas prefer subtlety is emotional preservation. Social interaction, while rewarding, also demands emotional labor, reading body language, adjusting tone, and managing impressions. Psychologists note that even extroverts can feel drained after too much of this. For introverted yet self-sufficient personalities like the Sigma, conserving emotional energy is non-negotiable. They understand that every yes to unnecessary social demands is a no to their own growth. Thus, they make a deliberate choice to invest only in relationships that bring depth rather than shallow familiarity. This approach also shields them from one of the greatest thieves of focus, distraction. In a world that celebrates oversharing and constant availability, the Sigma quietly resists. By refusing to broadcast his every move or spread himself across countless obligations, he maintains the clarity that many lack. And with clarity comes strength, the ability to act deliberately rather than react impulsively. So while it may appear mysterious that a Sigma male prefers the shadows, it's not secrecy for secrecy's sake, it's preservation, it's focus. It's a deliberate redirection of limited mental and emotional reserves toward pursuits that build real value. In doing so, he lives not as a scattered participant in the noise of the crowd, but as a measured architect of his own destiny. Number 4, they move without resistance. The less attention a man draws, the more freely he can move. This principle is something Sigma males deeply understand. And it is not just a matter of personality, it's strategy. History and psychology both show us that visibility attracts scrutiny. The moment someone becomes the center of attention, they also become a target for expectations, criticisms, and even envy. In ancient times, kings and leaders surrounded themselves with guards, not just for physical protection, but because their visibility drew resistance from rivals and subjects alike. The same principle applies in modern life. The louder a man lives, the more obstacles appear in his path. Sigma males, often described as lone wolves of the social hierarchy, avoid unnecessary attention because they recognize how it limits movement. They embody the wisdom found in Sun Tzu's The Art of War, where invisibility and unpredictability are presented as key tactics. When no one knows your next move, no one can stop it. Like water flowing around rocks in a river, the Sigma adapts, bends, and finds his way through challenges without clashing head-on. This ability to remain unnoticed, yet effective, allows him to pursue goals without interference. Psychology also supports this preference for subtlety. Studies in social behavior reveal that individuals who operate quietly and avoid social comparison often experience lower stress levels and higher personal satisfaction. By not placing themselves in constant competition, they conserve mental energy and focus on their personal mission. In contrast, extroverted dominance, or the craving for attention, can drain resources, leading to burnout or vulnerability when others inevitably push back. This doesn't mean Sigma males are weak or passive. Quite the opposite, they are strategic. Think of how intelligence operatives or master chess players succeed. It is not through boasting about every move, but through calculated silence. In fact, many innovators and thinkers throughout history preferred solitude and obscurity while working. Nikola Tesla, for example, was notoriously private, often withdrawing from public life so he could focus on his experiments without distraction. His invisibility gave him the freedom to create without constant resistance. In today's society, where visibility is often mistaken for success, the Sigma male's shadowed path is a reminder that strength doesn't always roar. By staying out of sight, he avoids unnecessary conflicts, preserves his independence, and gains the rare ability to move freely in a world that is always watching. His life flows like water, not always noticed, but always finding its way. Number 5, they let their work speak for them. Sigma males don't announce every step they take because they recognize a timeless truth. Real strength does not need to be constantly broadcast. In today's world, where social media rewards oversharing and many people feel compelled to showcase even the smallest achievements, the Sigma male stands apart. He understands that true accomplishment speaks for itself. Just as an oak tree does not need to announce when its roots deepen beneath the soil, a Sigma knows that quiet growth is the most powerful form of progress. Results, when they finally appear, are undeniable and far more impressive than any premature boasting. This approach is not about secrecy for its own sake, but about strategy. Research in psychology shows that people who loudly declare their goals often experience a sense of false achievement. In other words, by telling others what they plan to do, they trick their brains into feeling as though they've already succeeded. Sigma males avoid this trap by keeping their plans close to the chest, focusing their energy on execution rather than performance. Their restraint preserves motivation, ensuring that their achievements come to life fully formed rather than half-spoken. There is also an element of authority that grows from this silence. History is filled with figures who shaped the world not by clamoring for attention, but by working quietly until their results were too great to be ignored. Nikola Tesla, for instance, often worked in obscurity, unveiling inventions that stunned the world. Similarly, Sigma males know that respect is not earned through noise, but through undeniable evidence of competence. When results appear, whether in career, personal growth, or creative pursuits, they command attention naturally. People are drawn to proven strength, not to empty declarations. This quiet authority also protects the Sigma male from unnecessary judgment and interference. By not revealing every detail of his journey, he avoids critics, doubters, and saboteurs who might discourage or derail progress. Instead, he operates under the radar, allowing him to refine his craft, correct mistakes, and develop mastery without the distraction of outside opinions. In a culture obsessed with immediate validation, his silence becomes a shield as well as a strategy. Ultimately, Sigma males understand a simple law of life. Time reveals all things. Success does not need advertising when the outcome is undeniable. By choosing results over recognition and patience over performance, they cultivate a presence that is both commanding and effortless. It is this very refusal to announce every move that grants them the rarest form of respect, authority that is recognized without ever being requested. Number 6, they understand the value of mystery. There is strength in not being fully known. This is a principle that has echoed across history, psychology, and even nature itself. Think about the deep ocean. Scientists estimate that more than 80% of it remains unexplored. And because of that mystery, it commands awe and respect. In much the same way, people who are not entirely understood hold a certain power. They carry an air of unpredictability, and this unpredictability naturally shifts how others interact with them. Sigma males, in particular, thrive on this dynamic. By choosing what to reveal and what to withhold, they shape the way others perceive them while keeping control firmly in their own hands. Psychology backs this up. Research into social dynamics shows that uncertainty often increases intrigue. In fact, studies in interpersonal attraction have revealed that when people don't know everything about someone, their curiosity heightens and they become more invested in trying to understand that person. This aligns perfectly with how Sigma males operate. They reveal just enough to stay relevant, but never so much that they become predictable or easy to manipulate. This careful balance of disclosure keeps others guessing, ensuring that the Sigma male maintains leverage in both personal and professional settings. History also shows us the power of mystery. Take Nikola Tesla, for example. His reclusive personality and cryptic statements about his inventions built an almost mythical aura around him. People respected him not only for his genius, but also because they could never fully anticipate what he would do next. Similarly, ancient leaders often used mystery to project strength. By withholding their true intentions, they left rivals second-guessing, which often tilted the balance of power in their favor. In modern life, this translates to influence and resilience. When you don't reveal all your cards, others can't easily box you in or exploit your weaknesses. Sigma males, by nature, resist external control and thrive on self-reliance. Their unpredictability becomes a shield. In relationships, it keeps their partners intrigued. In business, it keeps competitors unsettled. And in social dynamics, it commands quiet respect, without needing loud displays of dominance. Ultimately, the Sigma male's mysterious nature isn't just about being secretive, it's a deliberate strategy for self-preservation, influence, and control over one's own narrative. Operating in the shadows is not about hiding. It is about prioritizing clarity over noise and purpose over performance. The Sigma male chooses silence not because he is weak, but because he understands that real power does not need constant display. History is filled with figures who thrived in quiet strength. Think of Nikola Tesla, whose innovations shaped modern technology, yet he often worked in solitude while others chased fame. Or Bruce Lee, who described stillness and restraint as forms of mastery, teaching that the wise are not learned and the learned are not wise. The Sigma embodies this principle. What matters is not how loudly he moves, but the direction of his journey and the discipline behind each step. By valuing observation over reaction, avoiding needless conflict and protecting his energy, the Sigma male preserves control over what many men lose, the ability to steer his own life without being consumed by distractions. Psychology even supports this. Studies in cognitive science show that people who spend more time observing before acting make sharper, longer-lasting decisions, while impulsive behavior often leads to stress and regret. In this way, the Sigma's deliberate stillness becomes a strategic advantage. In a society that glorifies constant noise, selfies, and status updates, his silence cuts through the chaos. It is not withdrawal but strategy, like a chess player who knows that the strongest moves are rarely the most obvious. The brightest flames burn out quickly, but steady embers endure through the night. And so the Sigma male's mystery is not a mask, but a shield, making him untouchable by the turbulence of others. If you find yourself more comfortable listening than speaking, more focused on building than competing, you are not behind. You are refining wisdom in silence. You are gathering strength where others are losing it. And when the time comes, your results, not your noise, will speak for you. The world may overlook the man in the shadows, but the Sigma knows this is exactly where his power grows. Sigmas don't flinch when insulted. He doesn't react when pushed. And when the world raises its voice, he responds with silence. But this silence is not surrender. It's power. It's the strength of a man who's evolved beyond petty confrontations, emotional reactivity, and the need to explain himself to people who were never listening. This isn't apathy. It's not weakness. It's the final form of psychological mastery. When a Sigma becomes untouchable, he enters a state of quiet dominance. While the world runs on noise, validation, and constant social positioning, the Sigma operates in stillness. Studies in behavioral psychology reveal that people who remain calm under stress are perceived as more competent and authoritative. That's exactly what makes the Sigma so unsettling. He breaks social scripts simply by not playing the game. Most men are triggered by disrespect, rejection, or pressure. But the Sigma has trained his mind through solitude, reflection, and detachment. He understands the psychology of control, how those who try to provoke are often revealing their own insecurities. His lack of response becomes a mirror that reflects the chaos of others. He doesn't fight for dominance. His presence alone shifts the dynamic. This isn't about becoming Sigma. This is about the final stage, the untouchable phase. It's when he no longer seeks to fit in, explain himself, or prove his worth. Instead, he influences quietly, strategically, and permanently. He becomes an enigma, a disruptor, a calm force in a world of chaos. And people don't know how to handle a man who can't be manipulated. So if you've ever walked away instead of lashing out or been misunderstood, not because you were wrong, but because you were ahead of your time, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. This is the mindset of the man who cannot be shaken. Welcome to the final form of masculine self-mastery. Let's begin. Number 1, he masters the art of saying less. Words are currency, and the Sigma male spends them like gold, rarely, wisely, never carelessly. In a world obsessed with noise, chatter, and constant validation, the Sigma stands apart like a silent mountain. He doesn't waste words trying to be heard. He waits until the silence is so loud that his voice naturally becomes the focus. Where most people fear awkward pauses in conversation, he sees opportunity. Silence to him is not emptiness, it's presence, it's pressure, it's power. Studies in communication have shown that nonverbal cues, including silence, can be more influential than spoken words. The Sigma understands this instinctively. He lets silence do the heavy lifting while others scramble to fill the void. While some speak to impress, weaving elaborate stories to seek approval, the Sigma speaks to impact. His words aren't just sounds, they're statements. And because he doesn't constantly broadcast his thoughts when he speaks, it lands with precision and weight. Psychologically, people are wired to pay more attention to what's scarce and unpredictable. This is why his mystery becomes magnetic. Oversharing dilutes power. Withholding builds it. The Sigma sharpens his language the way a warrior sharpens his blade. His sentences are short, intentional, and clear, not because he's uninterested, but because he respects the strength of well-placed words. Just as an author trims unnecessary words to strengthen prose, the Sigma refines his speech to eliminate waste. Every word is like a sniper's bullet, measured, calculated, and powerful. This minimalist communication style not only commands respect, it also leaves others slightly on edge. They wonder what he's thinking, they replay his sentences, they anticipate his next move, and that anticipation, that curiosity, gives him a psychological edge in nearly every social interaction. In business, relationships, and leadership, the ability to control a room without saying much is a rare form of influence. The Sigma has mastered that art. His silence is not absence, it's awareness. And his speech is not noise, it's strategy. He knows that in the economy of influence, cheap talk is inflation. So he invests his words like a master trader, only when the return is guaranteed. That's why people listen when he speaks, because every word is chosen like a strike of a blade. Number two, he observes first, then moves. While others rush in, the Sigma male watches. He doesn't operate in panic or eagerness. Instead, he approaches life like a strategist on a chessboard. He scans the room, not just with his eyes, but with a sharpened intuition trained to read body language, tone, and subtle shifts in energy. Where most people speak to be heard, the Sigma listens to understand. He studies people not to manipulate, but to position himself wisely. His silence isn't empty, it's tactical. In psychology, this is called a trait often linked with high emotional intelligence and strategic thinkers. Unlike the alpha, who thrives on dominance, or the beta, who conforms, the Sigma thrives in calculated detachment. He lets people talk, rant, boast, and bluff, because he knows that given enough time, everyone shows their true hand. He doesn't chase fleeting moments, he times them with surgical precision. In nature, predators like the snow leopard don't waste energy sprinting after every movement. They wait for the perfect opening. The Sigma is no different. He's not interested in being first to jump at every opportunity. He's obsessed with being right. That's the Sigma edge. He trusts his process more than the noise of the crowd. When others are busy acting for attention, posting every move online, seeking validation, the Sigma is moving silently, stacking quiet wins, and preparing for long-term positioning. You might spot him in the corner of the room, seemingly disengaged, but mentally he's already 5 moves ahead. His mind works like a radar, tracking motives, predicting reactions, and assessing potential threats or allies. It's a slow burn strategy, and it works. In military terms, this is the principle of observe, orient, decide, act, OODA loop, and Sigma males live it unconsciously. They don't seek the spotlight because they don't need it. What they want is power, not applause. And power, in the Sigma's world, is born from patience, perception, and precision. While others are burning themselves out trying to impress, the Sigma is quietly building leverage, social, psychological, and financial. Because at the end of the day, he knows something most don't. Timing trumps talent, and silence screams louder than noise. Number 3, he detaches without bitterness. When he leaves, it's clean. No lingering texts, no unfinished conversations, no messy emotional loops, just silence. Complete final. That's the signature move of the Sigma male. It's not heartlessness, it's discipline. It's a calculated understanding of self-worth and emotional boundaries. While the world is caught up in chasing closure, rehashing arguments, or seeking validation from those who don't value them, the Sigma walks away with something much stronger than vengeance, clarity. He knows something most don't. Detachment isn't weakness, it's power. Psychologically, detachment is the ability to separate one's sense of identity and peace from external chaos. In fact, cognitive behavioral studies suggest that emotional detachment can improve mental health by reducing stress and anxiety, especially in toxic environments. The Sigma male has mastered this. He doesn't ghost to be cruel. He vanishes to protect his energy. He's not emotionally unavailable. He's emotionally selective. He knows that not everyone deserves access to his presence, and he refuses to let drama take root in his life. When a connection turns into confusion, he doesn't demand explanations. He doesn't stalk social media for signs or replay memories in his head. Instead, he lets it all go. People, situations, even feelings that once ran deep. He lets them dissolve like smoke in the wind. Why? Because he knows the cost of clinging to what no longer serves him. The Sigma doesn't beg for closure because he's the closure. His internal compass is strong enough to navigate storms without needing someone else to hand him a map. That's the secret. It's not that he doesn't care, it's that he cares enough about himself not to stay in dysfunction. This self-respect, this emotional self-sufficiency is rare and intimidating to many. In a world where people are addicted to emotional chaos, the Sigma chooses peace. And when he walks away, it isn't a cry for attention, it's a final decision. A quiet assertion that his value does not decrease when someone fails to see it. So if a Sigma male leaves, understand it wasn't impulsive, it was intentional. He saw the storm ahead and chose stillness over struggle. No drama, no guilt, just clean silence. The sound of a man who refuses to drown in someone else's storm. Number 4, he trains in solitude. While the world finds comfort in crowds, the Sigma male finds discipline in distance, a quiet rebellion against the noise of conformity. Unlike most who fear solitude, the Sigma does not withdraw to escape the world. He does so to sharpen himself against it. His withdrawal isn't rooted in antisocial behavior, but in a relentless commitment to personal growth. Solitude for him isn't loneliness, it's strategy. Neuroscience even supports this. Studies have shown that solitude can enhance creativity, improve focus, and strengthen emotional regulation. In silence, the Sigma sharpens his thoughts like a blade, cutting away distractions, doubts, and dependence. He uses isolation not as an escape, but as an incubator for transformation. While others seek validation in likes, status, and applause, he seeks clarity in quiet places where the only voice that matters is his own. In solitude, he doesn't just reflect, he plans. He envisions futures no one else can see and works tirelessly behind the scenes to bring them into reality. This discipline in distance is what gives him his edge. When no one is watching, he trains. When others are distracted by noise and trends, he builds in silence. It's a level of self-leadership few can understand because it's not performative, it's purpose-driven. And that's precisely why when he re-emerges, people are shocked. He moves differently, speaks with certainty, and operates at a frequency they weren't ready for. There's a psychological term for this transformation, and it's known to unlock higher cognitive function and self-awareness. The Sigma male doesn't distance himself because he's broken. He distances himself because he's building. And what he's building isn't just success, it's mastery. Mastery over his mind, his path, and his purpose. In a world addicted to constant interaction, the Sigma chooses meaningful evolution. He understands something powerful. Progress often requires stepping away from the crowd to hear the whisper of who you're meant to become. Number 5, he does not explain himself. The Sigma male doesn't need you to understand him, and that's not arrogance, it's self-mastery. He operates on a different frequency, one that isn't tuned to social approval or external validation. While most people spend their lives curating an image, trying to be understood, liked, or accepted, the Sigma walks the opposite path. He's not here to be interpreted, explained, or neatly categorized. His mission is internal, understanding himself, refining his own character, and building his life on principles that don't require applause. You won't find him in debates trying to prove his point, nor will you hear him begging for someone to believe in his vision. He's not driven by the need to be seen. He's driven by the need to be real. Psychologically, this is rooted in high intrapersonal intelligence, a term coined by developmental psychologist Howard Gardner, describing individuals who possess a deep awareness of their inner emotional life and motivations. Sigmas embrace this self-awareness with calm precision. They don't shout their truth, they embody it. And that's the catch. Real truth doesn't scream for attention, it doesn't need to convince, it simply exists quietly, like a mountain in the distance. The Sigma male mirrors that stillness. His power lies in presence, not persuasion. Let people talk. Let them speculate, gossip, label, or misunderstand him. It doesn't matter. While they're trying to decode his silence or pick apart his decisions, he's already a few moves ahead, evolving, pivoting, and thriving without explanation. Sociologists might call him an intentional outsider, someone who chooses solitude not from rejection but from clarity. That's why Sigma males often seem detached. They're not emotionally absent, they're emotionally disciplined. They refuse to waste energy where none is needed. If he walks away from an argument, it's not because he's weak, it's because he knows the battlefield isn't worth the war. In a world obsessed with noise, the Sigma male is fluent in silence. And in that silence, he finds something most never do: peace, purpose, and power. So no, he doesn't need you to get him. He's not waiting for that. He's already gone, chasing something bigger than attention: truth, growth, and legacy. Number 6, he values precision over perfection. The Sigma male doesn't waste time chasing perfection because he knows it doesn't exist. In a world obsessed with flawless outcomes and polished appearances, the Sigma sees through the illusion. Perfection to him is a myth, a socially engineered trap designed to keep capable men stuck in endless preparation, doubt, and delay. He understands that perfection is a moving target, and those who chase it often end up standing still. Instead, the Sigma chooses effectiveness. He values results over aesthetics, progress over paralysis. His focus is on what works, not what looks good on paper. This mindset is rooted in a practical, almost scientific approach to life. Psychologists have long recognized the difference between perfectionism and high achievement. While perfectionists often fear failure and procrastinate, high achievers, like the Sigma, set realistic goals and move forward with purpose, even if the path is messy. The Sigma isn't careless, though. Every move he makes is calculated. His choices are measured, not impulsive. He applies a principle similar to the 80-20th rule, also known as the Pareto principle, which states that 80% of outcomes come from 20% of efforts. He identifies the essential 20% that brings the most return and focuses his energy there. That's why he doesn't waste time obsessing over the small details that have little impact. Even when he makes mistakes, he sees them as data points, not failures. To him, errors are not setbacks, but feedback loops that sharpen his precision. It's a deliberate process of refinement, like a sculptor removing excess stone to reveal the form within. Each mistake gives him a clearer sense of what works and what doesn't. This is what separates the Sigma from others. He doesn't fear imperfection, he harnesses it. Because while perfection paralyzes the masses, precision builds the Sigma's empire, one intentional decision at a time. In a society where many are stuck tweaking, editing, revising, and waiting for the perfect moment, the Sigma is already 10 steps ahead, not because he's reckless, but because he knows that clarity emerges from action, not overthinking. His life is a series of purposeful movements, not endless rehearsals. And that is where his power lies, not in flawless execution, but in flawless direction. By pursuing effectiveness over perfection, the Sigma becomes the kind of man who builds, adapts, and rises, while others remain frozen in the illusion of getting it just right. Number 7, he builds quiet power. Power isn't always loud. It doesn't always roar through dominance or demand attention in a crowded room. Sometimes real power walks in quietly, says nothing, and still changes the entire atmosphere. This is the kind of power the Sigma male embodies, a power rooted not in bravado but in self-restraint. In a world that praises overreaction, the Sigma remains still. While others feel the need to clap back, to prove themselves, or to win every argument, the Sigma male understands that silence can be the sharpest sword. Neuroscience even supports this. Studies show that people who can manage their emotional responses, particularly in stressful situations, have higher emotional intelligence, which is directly linked to better decision-making, leadership, and long-term success. The Sigma has mastered this. He doesn't react because he doesn't need validation. His power is in the pause, in the ability to choose not to respond, to walk away without a word, and to never look back. It's not that he's weak or incapable. It's that he's evolved past the need to engage in meaningless power plays. Unlike the Alpha, who thrives on control, or the Beta, who seeks approval, the Sigma seeks peace. And ironically, that makes him more powerful than both. His life isn't a stage show, but a blueprint for quiet mastery. You won't see him flaunting wins on social media, but his results speak volumes. Through the businesses he builds, the lives he impacts, and the calm certainty that follows him. When you cross paths with a Sigma male, you won't remember what he wore or even what he said. What you'll remember is how his calm presence made you feel. There's no need for showmanship because his energy says everything. That's not arrogance. It's alignment. Alignment with his purpose, his values, and his inner code. True alignment eliminates the need for external validation. It silences the noise of insecurity and replaces it with clarity. And in that clarity, the Sigma male becomes untouchable, not because he's the loudest, but because he's the most grounded. His silence is not emptiness. It's control. His calm is not weakness. It's awareness. And his restraint is not submission. It's power refined. The Sigma male doesn't just walk away from conflict. He rises above it. And that is the kind of power that doesn't need to shout to be felt. It's simply number 8. He doesn't fear being misunderstood. Most people go through life trying to fit in, fearing rejection like it's a death sentence. The need to be liked, understood, and accepted by others is deeply wired into human psychology. But the Sigma male, he operates on an entirely different frequency. While others shrink at the idea of being misjudged or misunderstood, the Sigma thrives in it. Misunderstanding for him is not a curse. It's camouflage. It protects his mission. It keeps him hidden from unnecessary attention, from social obligations that drain his energy, and from the expectations that chain most people to a version of themselves they don't even recognize. He doesn't crave validation because he understands something powerful. Most people are projecting, not perceiving. So when the world slaps a label on him, cold, distant, arrogant, he doesn't flinch, he doesn't explain. Why? Because explanation is an invitation, and he's not looking to be invited into their boxes. Sigmas are deeply introspective by nature, often driven by internal compasses that don't require applause or applause meters. Psychology even points to this mindset as a form of self-determined motivation, where purpose is driven from within, not from external rewards or recognition. The Sigma walks his path silently, often misunderstood, but completely aligned with who he is. And paradoxically, that very detachment makes him unforgettable. People may not understand him, but they can't stop thinking about him. There's a mystery to him that lingers, a calmness that unnerves, and a confidence that speaks without words. He doesn't need the world to walk with him. He just needs room to walk alone. And that's exactly what makes his presence so rare, so powerful, and so impossible to ignore. Becoming untouchable isn't about shutting down emotions, it's about sharpening your clarity. A Sigma male isn't numb, he's intentional. He knows his values, guards his peace, and walks a path few dare to follow. While the world scrambles for attention and overreacts to every slight, the Sigma remains still, mastering self over chaos. This stillness isn't weakness, it's power. In psychological terms, this self-regulation builds resilience, calm, and focus. By conquering himself, the Sigma becomes both invisible to nonsense and unforgettable to the wise. He doesn't storm into rooms, he slips in, quiet, calculated, unbothered. No handshakes, no small talk, no masks. And for that, people hate him. But not for the reasons you might think. The Sigma male isn't loud, flashy, or eager to be noticed. In fact, he's the opposite. He is the embodiment of silence in a world addicted to noise. This man doesn't chase validation, and he certainly doesn't ask for permission. He walks through life like a ghost in broad daylight, seen but not truly known, and it drives people mad. Why? Because the Sigma male breaks the unspoken social contract, the one that says you must constantly prove yourself to others. He doesn't play by society's rules, not out of rebellion, but out of sheer disinterest. While others broadcast their lives online, counting likes and followers as proof of worth, the Sigma remains a mystery, a man unplugged from the algorithm. Psychologists have noted that humans are hardwired to respond to social cues. And when someone doesn't mirror back the expected behaviors, smiling on command, making small talk, showing deference, it triggers discomfort and even hostility. That's why the Sigma's quiet defiance isn't just misunderstood, it's feared. His habits, solitude, independence, emotional control, shine a light on everyone else's dependency, insecurity, and performative personas. And when someone doesn't beg to be liked, it threatens those who live for approval. That's why the Sigma male isn't just disliked, he's resented. His presence is a walking contradiction to everything people have been conditioned to admire. And it exposes something deeper, that maybe we've been taught to chase the wrong things. This video isn't about surface-level charm or charisma, it's about the truth, the raw, inconvenient truth. The very habits that make Sigma males so powerful are the same ones that make others uncomfortable. Not because they're wrong, but because they force people to confront their own weaknesses. So sit still, we're going deep. Habit 1, when presence feels like rejection. The modern world is designed to hijack your attention. Every app is meticulously crafted to trigger dopamine hits, making you crave likes, swipes, and endless scrolling. Brands spend billions to make you feel incomplete without their product. Social media influencers transform personal moments into performances, choreographing authenticity for views. In the middle of this digital circus, where noise is currency and visibility is power, the Sigma male steps back. He doesn't dance for algorithms or plead for relevance. He's not interested in broadcasting his breakfast or arguing in comment sections. Instead, he observes silently, strategically. He disappears from group chats, not out of rudeness, but out of rebellion, rejecting the unspoken demand to be constantly available. He skips the party not because he's shy, but because he values substance over spectacle. And when he does walk away, it's without a dramatic exit or lingering goodbyes. That silence, it's deafening to those who need constant reassurance. His absence becomes a mirror, reflecting others' insecurities. People don't hate the Sigma because he's distant. They hate that he's immune to the system they've surrendered to. In a world addicted to validation, his indifference is revolutionary. Society tries to frame him as antisocial, broken or cold because labeling him makes him easier to dismiss. But the truth is, he's not playing their game, he's playing his own. Research in psychology has shown that people who are less dependent on external validation tend to be more emotionally resilient and self-aware. The Sigma embodies this, functioning with an internal compass rather than a crowdsourced map. His detachment isn't apathy, it's a conscious boundary. He's not hostile, he's just free. And that freedom in a world built on conformity is terrifying, because the moment you stop needing the crowd is the moment you realize how much control they had. The Sigma male has already realized this. He's not here to be liked, he's here to be real, and that alone makes him dangerous in a society addicted to performance. Habit 2, indifference is his armor. People often misunderstand the Sigma male because he doesn't operate like the rest. His calm demeanor is mistaken for coldness, his silence for arrogance, and his emotional detachment for disrespect, but nothing could be further from the truth. Internally, the Sigma is not wrestling with the need to be liked or validated. There is no internal chaos demanding external comfort. He's not chasing the highs of applause or running from the lows of criticism. What lies beneath his still surface is a rare form of self-mastery, emotional sovereignty. Studies in psychology confirm that individuals with high emotional intelligence are less reactive and more resilient under pressure, and the Sigma embodies this to the extreme. He moves through conflict with surgical precision, addressing problems not with raised voices or flared tempers, but with calm decisions and calculated boundaries. He doesn't lash out because he doesn't need to. That kind of control, especially in high-stakes or emotionally charged situations, can be unnerving to those who are ruled by impulse and emotion. People who haven't developed that level of inner discipline often find his composure threatening, so they call it cold. They call it robotic. They call it disgusting. But what they really mean is intimidating, because in a society where emotional reaction is currency, where drama, outrage, and vulnerability are traded like likes and retweets, his refusal to play along is seen as rebellion. He doesn't crumble when ignored, he doesn't beg for attention, and he certainly doesn't compromise his peace to soothe someone else's chaos. He isn't heartless, he simply isn't governed by emotional storms. That's a level of independence most don't understand, and yet paradoxically, it's what draws people in. There's strength in his silence, power in his restraint. In a culture saturated with oversharing and overreacting, the Sigma stands apart. He's proof that you don't have to be loud to be powerful, and you don't have to be seen to be in control. His detachment isn't rejection, it's refinement. It's the result of years spent mastering the inner world while others were distracted by the outer one. In a world addicted to emotional reactions, the Sigma's calm is not a flaw, it's a threat. And deep down they know it. Habit 3, he exposes the performers. In social settings, Sigma males do something deceptively simple, yet undeniably dangerous. They listen, they watch, they calculate. While others compete for attention, status, or validation, the Sigma remains silent, observant, and disengaged from the social rat race. This isn't passivity, it's power in its quietest form. The Sigma male doesn't need to assert dominance because he dismantles the very framework that demands it. When the loudest man in the room boasts about his achievements, the Sigma offers no applause or rivalry, only a calm, unreadable gaze. When a manipulator spins their web of control, the Sigma doesn't argue or react. He simply removes himself from the trap, exposing the manipulator's game without a word. His silence becomes unsettling, because it doesn't offer the emotional feedback people crave. Psychologically, humans are wired to seek acknowledgement, to test their power against others. The Sigma denies them that satisfaction, and in doing so, he becomes a mirror, one that reflects not admiration but insecurity. This is why many find the Sigma male unnerving. He operates outside the traditional social hierarchy, where alpha males dominate and betas submit. In fact, psychologist Robert Hogan's socioanalytic theory explains that most people are driven by a need to get along and get ahead. The Sigma violates both. He doesn't strive to belong and he doesn't chase status. Yet paradoxically, his independence becomes magnetic. People can't ignore him, and that breeds resentment. His refusal to play by society's rules feels like rebellion, especially in a world obsessed with visibility and performance. His power lies in detachment. While others are busy strategizing their next move in the social chess game, the Sigma is already 3 moves ahead, or not even playing the game at all. This psychological distance allows him to observe motives, read intentions, and dismantle manipulative structures with surgical precision. He doesn't need to dominate the room to own it. His quiet presence challenges the very foundation of social power, and that in itself is threatening. People hate him not because he tries to win, but because he doesn't try at all, and still leaves a lasting impact. In a society addicted to noise, the Sigma's silence is revolutionary and dangerous. Habit 4, mastery offends the mediocre. Most people today are addicted to distraction, and not by accident. In a world engineered for instant gratification, the average person scrolls, swipes, and refreshes their way through life, chasing fleeting hits of dopamine from social media, gossip, and superficial entertainment. It's a mental diet of junk food. And just like poor nutrition ruins the body, poor mental input sabotages growth. But the Sigma male is wired differently. He doesn't chase dopamine, he chases discipline. While others binge-watch shows or endlessly check their notifications, the Sigma is building. He's learning a new skill, refining his craft, investing in silence, and making invisible gains that compound over time. He doesn't seek validation from others. He's too focused on validating his own potential. This quiet dedication makes him both admirable and threatening. Not because he brags about his progress, he doesn't. In fact, his success is often invisible until it becomes undeniable. He simply becomes unreachable, not because he looks down on others, but because he's operating on a frequency few are willing to tune into, mentally, financially, and spiritually. And as his life begins to transform, people take notice, but not in celebration. Instead, they whisper, "He's just lucky. He's weird. He's full of himself." But deep down, their criticisms are a defense mechanism, a way to excuse their own complacency. The Sigma's very existence is a quiet indictment of their wasted potential. He represents what they could have become had they chosen focus over distraction, discipline over indulgence, purpose over popularity. His life becomes a mirror they can't escape, reflecting the reality they've avoided. That's why they hate him, not for what he says, but for what he silently reminds them. They're choosing stagnation while he chooses growth. And in a society that rewards noise and punishes solitude, the Sigma male's refusal to conform is both rebellious and powerful. He's not addicted to distractions. He's addicted to becoming the man he was always meant to be. Habit 5, disappearing without explanation. The Sigma male doesn't make a scene when he leaves. He doesn't slam doors or send dramatic texts. He simply vanishes without warning or explanation. To many, this behavior feels cold or dismissive, but in truth, it has nothing to do with cruelty. It's self-preservation. The Sigma is wired differently. He doesn't thrive on social validation or external reassurance. Instead, he operates from a deeply internal compass, and when he senses imbalance, manipulation, or emotional noise, his instinct is to retreat, not to hurt, not to punish, but to recharge, reassess, and protect his peace. His silence is not a declaration of war. It's an act of quiet rebellion against the chaotic pull of modern interpersonal expectations. Yet for those left behind, his exit feels like abandonment. Why? Because in a world obsessed with attention, validation, and being seen, the Sigma's withdrawal acts like a mirror. It reflects just how dependent many have become on external affirmation. Ghosting, a term often associated with immaturity or disrespect, takes on a different meaning when viewed through the Sigma lens. It's not a tactic, it's a philosophy. While others demand closure and explanations, the Sigma sees no need to explain what he didn't disrupt. His departure is not an attack, it's an alignment with authenticity. And this calm detachment, this complete indifference to dramatic farewells, hits harder than any argument. In fact, studies in psychology suggest that emotional ambiguity, such as a sudden, unexplained withdrawal, can be more psychologically distressing than overt conflict. It leaves the other person spiraling in self-doubt, not because of the Sigma's cruelty, but because of their own unhealed need for validation. The Sigma doesn't seek to sting, but the silence speaks louder than confrontation ever could. And that's what truly unsettles people, not the distance itself, but the realization that they were never as necessary to him as they thought. His world doesn't crumble without them. He doesn't beg for understanding. He just moves quietly, powerfully, and on his own terms. That is the essence of Sigma detachment. Not bitter, but deliberate. Not emotional manipulation, but energetic recalibration. And in a society addicted to noise, his silence is louder than thunder. Habit 6, speaking only when necessary. The Sigma male is allergic to small talk, not in the literal medical sense, of course, but in the way a minimalist reacts to clutter. It irritates him, bores him, and drains him. Unlike others who feel the need to fill silence with idle chatter just to avoid the discomfort of stillness, the Sigma male treats silence like a canvas, not a void. He doesn't speak to validate himself, to prove his worth, or to curry favor. He speaks when he has something to say, deliberate, calculated, and purposeful. This is not a matter of arrogance, but of authenticity. His communication is rooted in substance over style and depth over decoration. But to the average observer, his reserved demeanor can feel cold, standoffish, or even robotic. That's because we live in a culture that often equates verbal fluency with friendliness and silence with judgment. The Sigma male breaks that code entirely. Research in psychology confirms that people with introverted or highly independent temperaments like the Sigma archetype tend to find small talk not just tedious but cognitively taxing. It's not that they can't engage, they simply choose not to waste energy on conversations that don't move the needle. And that choice unsettles people. In a world dominated by noise, where everyone's broadcasting their thoughts and opinions 24/7, silence is often mistaken for disdain. But for the Sigma male, silence is strength. It's discipline. It's a filter that guards his energy, allowing him to invest his attention into ideas, pursuits, and people that actually matter. While others scatter their words like confetti, hoping something sticks, he treats his words like arrows, few, precise, and aimed with intent. In this sense, his quiet presence becomes a kind of rebellion against the performative noise of modern life. And paradoxically, that silence speaks louder than any sales pitch or social performance ever could. It's not that he's trying to insult anyone, he just refuses to speak unless his words carry weight. Habit 7, pursuing purpose, not popularity. He doesn't network, he aligns. In a world obsessed with constant self-promotion, handshakes, and status-driven circles, the Sigma male operates on a different frequency. He doesn't chase connections for clout. He seeks alignment of purpose, values, and vision. This is not arrogance, it's intentional living. While most people attend events, collect business cards, and trade authenticity for acceptance, the Sigma male works in silence to make himself undeniable. He doesn't shout his potential, he proves it. And this right here is what unsettles others. Society often rewards performative behavior over substance, but the Sigma's strength lies in doing the exact opposite. He isn't interested in playing the popularity game. His self-worth isn't dependent on being liked, validated, or praised. According to psychological studies, individuals with strong internal motivation, like Sigma personalities, are more likely to experience long-term fulfillment and resilience. This makes the Sigma male dangerous in the eyes of a conformist world because he doesn't need the approval of others to act. His goals are not sculpted by Instagram trends, peer pressure, or applause. He has a clear inner compass that guides his mission, often forged in solitude, hardship, and fierce independence. While others gravitate toward the crowd for safety and identity, he moves toward clarity, of thought, of purpose, of soul. Crowds can be noisy and chaotic. Clarity, on the other hand, is rare and earned. He builds while others scroll. He reflects while others react. This is not just a different habit, it's a different blueprint for life. And people don't just fail to understand it, they fear it. Why? Because it exposes their own dependency on external validation. It forces them to confront the uncomfortable truth that the loudest in the room is rarely the strongest. The Sigma male isn't antisocial, he's selectively social. He doesn't crave attention, he commands respect. And perhaps the scariest part, he does it all without asking for permission. In a world addicted to being seen, the Sigma male has mastered the art of becoming unforgettable without ever needing to be loud. Habit 8, rejecting manipulation instantly. The Sigma spots manipulation like smoke in a room, swift, subtle, and suffocating if unnoticed. Whether it's guilt-tripping disguised as concern, gaslighting masked by confusion, or flattery laced with ulterior motives, the Sigma male doesn't fall for it, not because he's cold-hearted, but because he's emotionally intelligent and mentally unshakable. You see, the Sigma operates from a place of inner clarity. He's studied human behavior intentionally or intuitively, and understands that manipulation thrives on emotional reaction. The manipulator's toolbox relies on getting a rise out of their target: confusion, defensiveness, anger, and neediness. But the Sigma offers none of these. He doesn't bite the bait, he doesn't argue to set the record straight, nor does he beg to be understood. Instead, he simply disengages. His silence is not a lack of awareness, it's a calculated move. Psychology tells us that manipulation loses its power when it is not rewarded with attention or emotion. The Sigma lives by this law. He stays calm, observes patterns, and when the signs become clear, he detaches. Manipulators hate him for this, because their power dissolves in the face of emotional neutrality. While most people are pulled into the manipulator's game, trying to explain themselves, defending their worth, or trying to fix the situation, the Sigma does the opposite. He exits, quietly, cleanly, effectively. This behavior is rooted in what some psychologists refer to as gray rocking, a technique where one becomes so emotionally unresponsive that the manipulator loses interest. But for the Sigma, this isn't a trick, it's a lifestyle. His minimal attachment to social validation gives him the freedom to walk away from toxic dynamics without second-guessing himself. He doesn't seek closure. He doesn't need to win. His win is peace. And so, while manipulators create storms, the Sigma walks in with a barometer and a parachute. He doesn't just survive manipulation, he makes it obsolete. The game ends before it even begins because he refuses to play. In a world that rewards reaction, his stillness is rebellion. In an arena where manipulators feed on emotional drama, the Sigma offers only one thing: ice-cold awareness. He's not angry. He's not bitter. He's just gone. And by the time the manipulator realizes they have no strings to pull, the Sigma is already halfway across the mental map, exploring higher ground where peace and purpose, not power plays, are the currencies of value. The Sigma male doesn't set out to be disliked. He simply lives as his most authentic self. He doesn't conform, doesn't flatter, and certainly doesn't beg for validation. In a world addicted to likes, masks, and shallow approval, his quiet defiance becomes an unspoken rebellion. Psychologically, this self-possession can trigger insecurity in others because it reflects a freedom they secretly crave but fear to pursue. People don't hate him for doing wrong, they resent him for doing what they're too afraid to do, live unfiltered. So while others judge or gossip, the Sigma watches, adapts, and evolves, alone, unnoticed, and unforgettable. He doesn't seek attention, he doesn't play by their rules, and yet they come for him relentlessly. Why? Because in a world that idolizes conformity, the Sigma male is the anomaly that can't be explained, predicted, or contained. His silence, it disrupts the noise. His solitude, it echoes louder than 1,000 voices. The Sigma doesn't reject society out of rebellion, he simply doesn't need it to define who he is. In biological terms, humans are wired for group behavior. From hunter-gatherer tribes to modern office cubicles, social cohesion has always been a survival tool. But evolution also birthed outliers, those who walked alone, observed more than they spoke, and thought deeper than they reacted. These are the Sigmas. They don't compete for alpha dominance or beta acceptance. They exit the hierarchy altogether, and that exit isn't passive. It's powerful, because it reveals a truth many refuse to face. Much of what we call success is actually social theater. Sigma males tear down that stage by refusing to act. In psychological studies, individuals who exhibit high self-determination, those who live by internal values rather than external rewards, tend to unsettle hierarchical structures. Why? because they're proof that fulfillment doesn't require applause. In corporate settings, the Sigma's refusal to play politics makes him appear threatening to those whose careers thrive on manipulation. In social settings, his calm demeanor is misread as arrogance by people addicted to validation. His stillness forces others to confront their own noise. And so, he is labeled, misunderstood, targeted, but not with open attacks, with subtler weapons, whispers, isolation, reputational sabotage. The world doesn't know what to do with a man who doesn't need it, so it tries to break him. But here's the catch, it can't. Because the Sigma doesn't draw strength from approval, he draws it from purpose. And when your compass is internal, no storm can reroute you. That's the essence of the Sigma male, quiet, unshaken, and untraceable. Not because he's hiding, but because he's free. And in a controlled world, nothing is more dangerous than a free man. Point 1. He can't be guilt-tripped. People often use guilt as a subtle form of manipulation to control others, especially those who have begun to break away from social norms or redefine their priorities. Phrases like, "Why don't you come out anymore?" or "You've changed" may seem harmless, even caring on the surface. But they're frequently rooted in an unspoken expectation. These questions are emotional hooks meant to reel someone back into old patterns of behavior. But guilt only has power over those who are still seeking validation, approval, or belonging. That's where the Sigma male stands apart. He isn't motivated by the need to be liked or accepted. His operating system runs on autonomy and internal truth. While most people crave connection to the point of self-abandonment, the Sigma male chooses integrity over inclusion. He values authenticity over appeasement and boundaries over blind bonding. When he withdraws, it's not out of malice, it's an act of preservation. He knows that time and energy are finite resources, and he's intentional with both. He doesn't owe anyone an explanation for his absence because his identity is not tied to anyone's expectations. And that unsettles people. Psychologically, this dynamic is tied to what social scientists call our tendency to interpret interactions based on relationship dynamics. When a Sigma male shifts or distances himself, others feel a loss of control in that dynamic, and they often react by trying to reassert emotional influence through guilt. But their efforts rarely succeed because the Sigma is already free from the psychological need to be managed by groupthink. That freedom is what gets him labeled as cold or heartless. It's not that he lacks emotion, it's that he doesn't let emotion dictate his decisions. In fact, this kind of emotional sovereignty is something many secretly envy. They may call him distant, but what they really feel is discomfort in the presence of someone who has mastered self-alignment, someone who cannot be guilt-tripped, manipulated, or emotionally coerced. And while society praises conformity masked as connection, the Sigma lives by a different code, one that protects his peace over popularity. He knows who he is. And ironically, it's that unwavering clarity that often draws people in, even as they pretend to push him away. Point 2. He sees through social masks. People often use guilt as a subtle weapon to control others, especially those who have started setting boundaries and walking a different path. You'll hear it in phrases like, "Why don't you come out anymore?" or "You've changed." On the surface, these words may seem like expressions of concern, but they often carry a manipulative undertone, a psychological push to make you feel responsible for someone else's discomfort. This tactic works best on those who are approval seekers, who crave validation, and who are deeply affected by the fear of disappointing others. But the Sigma male isn't built that way. He doesn't measure his worth by how many people he pleases. He's not interested in playing emotional chess with those who can't handle his detachment. He values truth over comfort, clarity over closeness, and purpose over people-pleasing. If he's absent, it's not an oversight, it's intentional. He doesn't explain himself because he doesn't owe anyone a justification for protecting his energy. That silence is his boundary. It's a declaration that he's not available for games or guilt trips. And because society is so conditioned to demand constant availability and emotional conformity, people find his self-containment threatening. They label him cold, arrogant, or heartless. But what they're really feeling is envy. Envy for the freedom he lives with, for the clarity he operates from. According to psychological studies, individuals who set firm boundaries tend to have higher self-esteem and better mental health. The Sigma doesn't isolate out of bitterness. He withdraws to preserve focus, peace, and authenticity. While others are entangled in emotional obligations, he moves through life with purpose and autonomy. This doesn't mean he lacks empathy or connection. It means he refuses to be emotionally manipulated into becoming someone he's not. In a world that thrives on distraction and demands emotional availability, the Sigma's discipline appears radical. But it's not cruelty, it's clarity. His distance isn't rejection, it's redirection. He's not avoiding people, he's choosing himself. And ironically, the more he does this, the more others are drawn to him. Not because he's chasing attention, but because he embodies what so many lack: freedom from guilt, freedom from approval, and the power to live by one's own design. Point 3. He disrupts group hierarchies. Every group, whether it's a corporate team, a school clique, a military unit, or a group of friends at a bar, naturally develops a hierarchy, a leader, followers, and the complex social glue that keeps the pecking order intact. People jostle for position through charm, dominance, loyalty, or influence, but then someone different shows up, the Sigma male. He doesn't play the game, not because he can't, but because he genuinely isn't interested. He doesn't want the crown, the applause, or the authority. That's precisely what makes him so disruptive. Unlike the alpha who commands the spotlight, or the beta who supports the alpha to gain approval, the Sigma exists outside this system. His power lies in his independence, and ironically, that makes others feel unsettled. You see, the human brain is wired to respond to social hierarchies. Studies in evolutionary psychology show that our ancestors survive better in structured tribes, so our modern minds still seek roles and status for a sense of security. When someone like the Sigma doesn't engage in this deeply embedded social contract, it exposes a truth that many aren't ready to face, that much of their confidence is rooted in how others see them. The Sigma doesn't need applause to validate his worth, and in doing so, he inadvertently becomes a mirror. That mirror reflects others' dependency on approval, hierarchy, and status, not by criticizing them, but simply by existing. And that's what creates tension. He doesn't outshine others by being louder or more dominant. He outshines them by being free from the need to impress, to lead, to be liked. That kind of neutrality is threatening in a world addicted to recognition. It's not aggression, it's detachment. And that detachment radiates an authenticity so rare that it challenges the very foundation of most social groups. The Sigma walks into the room and without lifting a finger, without playing anyone's game, he unsettles the entire order, not because he wants to win, but because he doesn't care if there's a game at all. Point 4. Women can't box him in. He's not the nice guy who panders, constantly seeking approval or sacrificing his identity to make others comfortable. He's not the dominant alpha who needs to be in control of every room, posturing to prove power. Instead, he walks a quieter, more powerful path, the Sigma male, the man who doesn't beg for attention and doesn't demand submission. He's the mystery she can't decode, the paradox who's fully present yet emotionally elusive. What makes him so compelling isn't loud behavior or visible dominance. It's his aura of controlled independence. He's stable in his values, but free in his spirit. Unpredictable, not because he's erratic, but because he can't be manipulated or mapped like everyone else. That unpredictability creates tension, an emotional gravity few can resist. Psychology backs this up. Research in interpersonal attraction shows that uncertainty often increases fascination. When something or someone isn't easily defined, the human brain becomes obsessed with solving the puzzle. The Sigma male embodies this. He's not aloof to appear cool. He's selective because his time, energy, and peace are sacred. Some love that about him, drawn to his quiet confidence and self-mastery. Others feel unsettled, even threatened by the fact that he doesn't need validation or approval. But whether they admire him or misunderstand him, no one forgets him. Because while most men orbit around attention, reacting to what the world expects, the Sigma orbits around purpose. Purpose gives him direction, not applause. He's internally motivated, building his life around goals, visions, and values, not people's opinions. That's what makes him rare in a society addicted to image. He knows who he is and doesn't ask for permission to be that man. He's the one she remembers years later, not because he played games or said the perfect words, but because he was unlike anyone else. When he enters a room, it's not noise that announces him, it's presence, a grounded, unshakable sense of self. In a world full of followers and controllers, He's something different, something real, something unforgettable. And that's why he never chases attention, because he knows attention always finds him. Point 5, he refuses to argue emotionally. People bait him, test him, try to spark a reaction, but he won't play their game. The Sigma male moves through social conflict like a chess grandmaster, measured, calm, and always 3 steps ahead. When others raise their voices, hoping to provoke him, his response is surgical. No raised voice, no emotional escalation, no ego-driven comeback. Just pure logic or deliberate silence. And that silence, it's not weakness, it's power. Research in psychology confirms that silence during conflict often shifts control to the quiet party, forcing the aggressor into a state of confusion or self-reflection. Emotionally reactive people can't stand this. They thrive on drama and feed off the chaos of emotional entanglements. When they don't get the reaction they crave, when their outburst meets a wall of calm, they unravel. Why? Because they expect others to respond the way would. But the Sigma doesn't bend to social expectations. He's not wired to seek validation through conflict or dominance. Instead, he finds strength in mental clarity and inner discipline. His presence is disarming not because he's loud, but because he's unreadable. Neurologically speaking, people are hardwired to seek emotional feedback in social situations. When that feedback is absent, when the Sigma stares back with stillness, it triggers discomfort in those who lack emotional control. They interpret his neutrality as superiority or judgment, and it exposes their own insecurity. Meanwhile, the Sigma male isn't trying to win the interaction. He's simply conserving energy, choosing not to invest in petty battles. It's stoicism in action, a trait deeply rooted in ancient philosophy, where the wise were taught to master their emotions rather than be mastered by them. This kind of discipline isn't common in a world where everyone wants to be heard first, react fastest, and talk loudest. The Sigma flips the script. He listens more than he speaks. He thinks before he moves. And when he does speak, his words cut through noise like a scalpel, precise, purposeful, and impossible to ignore. This is what makes him dangerous to the emotionally chaotic. Not his anger, but his unshakable calm. He's not trying to outshine anyone. He's just not dimming his light to match theirs. Point 6. He's immune to trends. The Sigma doesn't flinch, not because he's arrogant or indifferent, but because his mindset is forged in solitude and self-mastery. In a world obsessed with trends, outrage, and constant validation, the Sigma male stands as a countercurrent. New challenge, new movement, viral opinion. While most rush to react, riposte, or rant, the Sigma remains still, not out of fear, but because his worth isn't measured by his participation in noise. He's not against the world. He's just unaffected by its theatrics. This psychological detachment comes from a place of deep introspection and autonomy. Studies in personality psychology link such traits to high levels of introverted intuition and emotional regulation, skills often honed through intentional solitude and internal focus. The Sigma's silence isn't passive, it's deliberate. He doesn't speak to be seen, he speaks when it matters. Unlike those driven by performative validation, the Sigma only contributes when his words carry weight. And because of that rarity, people listen when he does. His influence doesn't come from volume, but from value. In fact, research shows that those who speak less but with precision are perceived as more competent and intelligent, a phenomenon called the reservoir effect. When everyone else is shouting, trying to go viral, his silence becomes a paradox. It feels like thunder. It commands attention not through aggression, but by contrast. This paradox mirrors ancient Stoic philosophy, which values mastery over one's emotions and reactions. Like Marcus Aurelius, who ruled without seeking applause, the Sigma moves through life with an internal compass, not a need for approval. Entertainment may change, trends may fade, but the Sigma remains anchored. And in today's chaotic digital battlefield of opinions and outrage, that calm, focused energy is rare and powerful. His silence can provoke more thought than 1,000 viral rants. Because while the world shouts to be noticed, the Sigma simply acts, and in doing so, he leaves a mark that's not just louder, but lasting. Point 7, he walks away fully. When he's done, he's done. No guilt, no games, no closure tours. That's the way of the Sigma male, and it unnerves people more than they care to admit. In a society where ghosting is normalized, but closure is still expected, the Sigma male breaks the mold with unapologetic finality. Most people leave cracks in the door, hoping for reconciliation, attention, or some emotional leverage. But the Sigma male, he closes the door, locks it, and tosses away the key without announcing the departure, not out of cruelty, but because he values peace over prolonged drama. Neuroscience backs this up. Studies on emotional regulation have shown that people who are more introspective and less socially dependent, traits often found in Sigma personalities, tend to recover faster from emotional turmoil when they cut ties decisively. The Sigma's detachment isn't emotional coldness, it's emotional efficiency. He doesn't burn bridges out of anger, he deletes the map because he has no intention of walking that route again. This rattles people because it denies them something they're used to. Emotional negotiation. They can't plead, manipulate, or linger in a loop of confusion. The Sigma leaves, and that silence becomes louder than any argument. This level of self-respect and boundary setting often gets misunderstood as arrogance or heartlessness. In reality, it's rooted in clarity. When something or someone no longer aligns with his values, vision, or energy, he exits, not to punish, but to protect. It's not about winning. It's about preserving his path. Society is conditioned to expect loops of dysfunction, breadcrumbing, and emotional gray zones. But the Sigma rewrites the script. His detachment is not an act of revenge, it's an act of evolution. And that's what shakes people to their core. Because deep down, many wish they had the strength to do the same, to walk away without making a scene, to disappear without guilt, to say nothing and still mean everything. Point 8. He creates, not competes. He doesn't measure success by beating others. He measures it by outgrowing himself. In a world obsessed with competition, comparison, and public validation, the Sigma male walks a different path. While others gauge their worth by outperforming peers, flashing their lifestyles on social media, or climbing the ladder faster than the next man, the Sigma male is locked into a more personal, internal mission, becoming better than who he was yesterday. This mindset is rooted in something deeper than ego, it's self-mastery. Psychologists describe this as intrinsic motivation, the drive that comes from within rather than from external rewards. Sigma males embody this. They don't care about applause, timelines, or trending metrics of success. While others broadcast their every move, chasing likes and recognition, the Sigma builds in silence. He's not interested in announcing every step of his progress, because he knows true strength doesn't need to speak. It simply becomes undeniable over time. When he arrives, when his plans finally bloom into visible success, it catches people off guard. Because he wasn't performing for an audience, he was preparing for a purpose. This element of quiet growth often baffles those used to loud ambition. Think of bamboo, which spends years growing underground before it suddenly shoots up feet within weeks. That's the Sigma's way, laying foundations others can't see until it's too late to catch up. Studies on high-performance individuals reveal that delayed gratification and low need for social approval are two critical traits of people who build enduring legacies. And that's exactly what the Sigma male is after. Not a flashy sprint, but a lifelong marathon rooted in discipline, clarity, and inner peace. His success isn't an explosion, it's an unveiling. And by the time the world notices, he's already miles ahead, not because he rushed, but because he refused to compete with noise and chose instead to align with his own growth. That's not just smart, it's rare, it's powerful, and it's very Sigma. They tried to shame him, provoke him, and isolate him, thinking they'd break him. But while the noise surrounded others, he found power in the silence. In the quiet, he built discipline. In the shadows, he sharpened his mind. And while the crowd scrambled for validation, he chased something rarer, truth. The Sigma male is not a product of popularity. He's forged through solitude. Unlike alpha types who thrive on leadership and control, or betas who seek group belonging, Sigmas stand apart. Psychological studies suggest that men with high introversion and self-direction often exhibit Sigma traits, thriving independently, resisting peer pressure, and focusing on internal growth. His strength isn't about overpowering others, but about staying aligned with his purpose. He doesn't seek fame, but his presence changes the room. His legacy isn't loud, but it lasts. In a world desperate for conformity, the Sigma chooses mastery over mimicry. Stay curious, stay Sigma.